The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void above a dying sun. It was a place of power and pride, filled with alien races that ruled half the known galaxy. Tall figures with shining scales, creatures made of mist, beings that spoke through light, all sat in their high seats, surrounded by the glow of 1,000 holographic stars. For centuries, the Council had decided the fate of worlds. They believed nothing could surprise them anymore. But today felt different. There was tension in the air, like a storm about to break. A low hum filled the chamber as a communication request blinked on the main holoscreen. It came from a forgotten corner of the galaxy, from a blue planet once called Earth. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. No one had heard from humanity in decades. Most thought they had destroyed themselves long ago. The Chancellor, an ancient being with silver eyes, raised a hand. "Play the message," he said in a calm voice. The lights dimmed. The chamber fell silent. The screen came alive. A human appeared, tall, wearing a dark uniform with a symbol of Earth on the chest. His eyes were calm but cold, filled with something the aliens couldn't name. His voice was steady, almost too calm. "This is Commander Elias Kane of the Terran Federation," he began. 50 years ago, when Earth cried for help, you turned your backs on us. You watched our cities burn and called it necessary loss. You called us emotional. You called us unstable." The counselors murmured, some offended, others confused. The human continued. "You thought humanity would fade into dust. But dust can rise again, stronger, sharper, unstoppable. We asked for mercy. You gave us silence. Now, we return the favor." The image flickered. A map of the galaxy appeared behind him, marked with red lights. "Hundreds of them." "Those are human fleets," whispered one alien in shock. "Impossible," said another. The Chancellor leaned forward, his calm breaking. "Is this a threat?" The human on the screen smiled faintly, as if hearing him across the stars. "It's not a threat," he said. "It's a promise. You left us no choice. This time, we will not kneel." The message ended. The screen went black. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Only the hum of the chamber filled the silence. Then, chaos erupted. Counselors shouted, some demanding immediate defense orders, others calling it a bluff. The Chancellor raised his voice above the noise. "Silence," he commanded. "Scan all borders. Verify if this message was real." Dozens of aides ran to control panels, their claws and tendrils moving fast. Then one of them froze. "Sir," she said softly, "you need to see this." The main screen lit up again, showing a sector near the edge of Council space. Hundreds of red signals were moving, fast, precise, silent. The computer identified them automatically, human vessels detected. The chamber went still. The Chancellor's face turned pale as light from the screen reflected off his skin. "Activate the defense grid," he ordered. "Now." But before the order could even echo, the defense systems began to fail. One by one, outer satellites went dark. Communication links broke. Entire listening posts vanished. "They are jamming us," shouted an officer. "No," said another in disbelief. "They are deleting us." The counselors turned to their Chancellor. "How can this be?" "They were primitive. They had nothing like our technology," someone cried. The Chancellor did not answer. He remembered something the humans once said long ago during a diplomatic meeting: "You underestimate the ones who survive everything." And now, it seemed those words had come true. Suddenly, the chamber shook. The image of a human fleet appeared again, clearer now. Their ships were not large or beautiful like the alien ones, they were black, sharp, and silent. No banners, no symbols of peace. Only purpose. A voice echoed through the system, the same human voice from before. "To the Galactic Council," it said. "We come not as conquerors, but as witnesses to your judgment." The Chancellor tried to reply, but his voice failed. What do you want from us?" he finally asked. The human paused. "We want you to remember," he said. "Remember what you did when we begged for help. Remember the children who burned. Remember the silence you gave us." The communication ended again. The silence that followed was heavier than before. A council guard whispered, "What should we do?" The Chancellor looked around the room. The leaders who once ruled thousands of worlds now looked frightened, small, and uncertain. He spoke slowly, his voice shaking. "Prepare the fleets. Inform every allied world. Humanity has returned." Outside, in the cold darkness of space, the first flashes of light appeared, human ships dropping out of warp. Their engines glowed like blue fire. Behind them stretched the shadows of thousands more. The stars themselves seemed to dim as they advanced. The Chancellor watched the feed, unable to look away. He whispered to himself, "We should have helped them." And far away, aboard one of the human ships, Commander Kane stood before his crew. "We asked for peace," he said quietly. "Now we deliver justice." The order was given. The stars blinked once more, and then the war began. 50 years before the council chamber trembled at the sound of humanity's voice, Earth was a dying world. The skies were dark with ash, oceans poisoned by war, and cities broken by endless conflict. Yet in that darkness, there was still hope. Humanity had sent a message to the Galactic Council, a desperate cry for help. The people of Earth believed the Council would listen, that the powerful races who ruled the stars would not ignore them. They offered trade, knowledge, and loyalty in exchange for aid. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and no answer ever came. The Council saw Earth as unstable, dangerous, too emotional to join their perfect order. They decided it was better to let humanity burn than risk their politics. On Earth, billions died waiting for help that never arrived. Children were born under red skies, learning only one truth: they were alone. The few nations that survived turned their anger into unity. Old governments fell. The Terran Federation was born, not from peace, but from loss. It was built by people who had seen their families starve while alien empires watched from above. Generations passed, and the story of the Council's betrayal became legend. It was told in whispers, carved into stone, and written in the stars. The Federation built ships from the ruins of old war machines, turning broken metal into new life. Every colony they founded carried one promise: never again would humanity beg. They hid from the Council, masking their signals, vanishing into the deep void. The galaxy thought they were gone, extinct, forgotten. But humanity had not disappeared, they had evolved. On a distant moon called Epsilon 9, a secret base thrived beneath layers of ice. Here, scientists and soldiers worked together in silence, far from any alien eyes. Their leader, Commander Elias Kane, was still a child then. He watched his father die from radiation, a victim of a broken world. That pain became his purpose. The Federation trained him, molded him, and when the time came, he became the voice of their revenge. Under Kane's command, humanity began to rise again. They built engines that bent light itself, weapons that could pierce through planets, and shields that could hide whole fleets. But they also built something greater: unity. Every human, no matter where they lived, shared the same memory: the Council's silence. While the Council argued in their shining halls, humanity worked in the shadows, learning from the ruins of their mistakes. They studied every alien transmission, every weakness, every war tactic. They became invisible observers of the galaxy that had abandoned them. Some alien traders spoke of mysterious ships seen near the edge of uncharted space, ships that did not answer hails and vanished like ghosts. The Council ignored the rumors, believing them to be pirate tales. But those ships were real, and they carried the mark of Earth. In the hidden archives of the Federation, a record was kept, a copy of the Council's refusal message. It was only one line: Earth's instability poses a threat to galactic order. Those words were burned into the minds of every cadet who joined the fleet. It was no longer about revenge, it was about respect. The Federation wanted to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. 50 years later, the preparations were complete. Massive hangars opened under silent moons, releasing the first of the new human fleets. The ships had no names, no flags, only serial codes. Their mission was simple: make the Council remember. As the fleet gathered, Commander Kane stood before his crew aboard the flagship Erebus. His voice echoed through the steel corridors. "Our ancestors asked for mercy," he said. "They received silence. Now, we speak in a language they will understand." Around him, thousands of officers saluted, their faces calm but filled with determination. No anger, no hatred, only purpose. Back in the core worlds of the Council, no one suspected a thing. The aliens celebrated their festivals, made trade agreements, and debated new laws, unaware that a storm was coming. A few historians mentioned Earth in passing, calling it a tragic chapter best forgotten. But out there, beyond their borders, the forgotten had become the powerful. Humanity had learned patience, something the Council had never understood. They waited, year after year, letting the galaxy grow comfortable in ignorance. They watched their enemies grow soft, lazy, divided by pride. Then, one quiet night, the order was given. Operation Dawnfall, begin. Across the stars, hidden human bases came alive. Engines roared in the silence of space, and thousands of ships slipped from the shadows. Their formation was perfect, their strategy flawless. The first phase was not destruction, it was observation. Human drones entered Council space, recording everything. They mapped every route, every fleet, every defense satellite. By the time the Council noticed, it was already too late. Humanity knew everything about them, while the Council knew nothing at all. On the flagship, Kane stood by the observation window, watching the distant stars. He thought of the past, the starving families, the empty promises, the ashes of old Earth. His heart was steady. "We will not destroy them without reason," he told his second-in-command. "But they must understand. The age of human silence is over." The officer nodded. "And if they refuse to listen?" Kane's eyes hardened. "Then they will hear us in the sound of their own walls falling." As the fleets advanced toward the Council's borders, one thing was clear: the galaxy was about to meet the new humanity, forged not in peace, but in pain. And far away, in the grand chamber of the Council, the old Chancellor looked out into the stars, unaware that history was already coming for him. The stars were calm before the storm began. In the cold silence of deep space, the human fleet moved like shadows, silent and invisible. Every ship was hidden behind cloaking fields, every signal muted. They had been waiting for this moment for 50 long years. Commander Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the flagship Erebus, watching as thousands of ships aligned in formation. His eyes were hard, his voice steady when he spoke. "All units, hold position. Await my signal." Across the fleet, the same order echoed in countless voices. The Galactic Council had no idea what was coming. Their patrol ships moved lazily across the border sectors, their captains half asleep, confident that no one would ever dare to challenge them. To them, humanity was only a ghost story, a myth told by traders who claimed to see strange ships near the outer rim. But the ghosts were real now, and they were coming with fire. The first strike was planned with perfect precision. The target, the Argon defense line, a chain of satellites and outposts guarding the edge of Council space. The system was considered impenetrable, a wall of steel and plasma that had stopped every invasion for centuries. But the humans had studied it for years, line by line, weakness by weakness. They knew the codes, the blind spots, the timing of every patrol. When the hour came, the Erebus sent a single pulse, an invisible signal across the void. The fleet moved as one. Human stealth ships glided past the outer sensors, releasing small drones that carried quantum virus payloads. The satellites blinked once, then went dark. No explosions, no alarms. Just silence. Within minutes, the entire defense grid was blind. The Council outposts received no warnings. One by one, their lights went out. Inside the Council's regional command center on Argon Prime, confusion spread quickly. Officers shouted at screens, technicians hit controls that no longer worked. "We've lost contact with Outpost 7, one cried. "Now Outpost 8, shouted another. The commander, a proud reptilian general named Zareth, slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Impossible. Run diagnostics." But as he spoke, the room flickered. A strange symbol appeared on every display, the symbol of Earth. The same symbol that had vanished from galactic records half a century ago. Before anyone could react, the first human ships decloaked right above the command planet. They were dark and angular, their hulls absorbing light itself. The alien soldiers froze. No warning shots came, no demands. The humans simply opened fire. Precision beams of energy struck down key defense stations. Entire weapon platforms exploded in silence, their debris floating like ash in space. In less than 5 minutes, the Argon defense line was gone. On the Erebus, Kane watched without emotion. "Phase 1 complete," said his officer. "Shall we move to Phase 2? Kane nodded. "Proceed. Leave no signal alive." The order spread across the fleet. Human ships jumped from one system to another, disabling communications, cutting off hyperspace routes, isolating entire sectors. The Council had never seen such coordination. Within an hour, thousands of planets were cut off from each other, their fleets blind and confused. Panic began to spread. The Council chambers lit up with emergency transmissions, but most were static, filled with frightened voices and broken cries for help. In the chaos, the Chancellor tried to remain calm, but fear had already taken hold. "Who dares attack the Council?" he demanded. "Find them." But the reports only brought more horror. Unknown fleet, uses old human frequencies, their ships carry the Earth insignia. The Chancellor's blood ran cold. Humans? Impossible. They cannot have such power. Yet the truth was right before him. Back on the Erebus, Kane walked to the central viewport. The stars burned brightly, reflecting on the glass like distant fires. His second-in-command approached. "Commander, the Council's fleets are mobilizing. They're sending reinforcements." Kane smiled faintly. "Good. Let them come." The reinforcements arrived within hours, massive alien warships, armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. They fired without warning, filling the void with blazing plasma. But the human ships moved like ghosts. Their shields absorbed the first wave, their counterattacks swift and precise. Missiles cut through enemy armor, disabling engines with surgical accuracy. Within minutes, the mighty Council fleet was reduced to wreckage drifting in silence. No one could believe what they were seeing. The humans didn't just win, they dominated. It wasn't brute force, it was strategy, patience, and perfect execution. The message was clear: humanity was no longer the weak race that had begged for help. They were now the hunters, and the galaxy was their prey. Kane opened a secure channel to all Council frequencies. His calm voice echoed across the stars. "This is Commander Elias Kane of the Terran Federation. We come not for conquest but for remembrance. You forgot us. You left us to die. Now, you will remember." The transmission played in every Council chamber, every fleet command, every broadcast station. Billions of aliens heard those words and felt a chill they could not explain. On Argon Prime, General Zareth stood on the smoking ruins of his base, staring at the dark sky filled with burning ships. He whispered to himself, "What have we done?" The human fleet did not stay to occupy. They came, struck, and vanished into the dark like shadows. The Council began to realize that their enemy was not just strong, it was everywhere. Every system that tried to fight back went silent. Every fleet that pursued found only wreckage. And somewhere, deep in the void, Kane stood before his crew and said, "They will fear our silence more than our weapons." The stars flickered again as the fleet jumped to its next target, leaving behind nothing but whispers of vengeance. The first strike was complete. The galaxy would never be the same again. The news of the first strike reached Celestra Prime like a storm that no one could stop. The capital of the Galactic Council, a planet of shining towers and endless light, had always believed itself untouchable. For thousands of years, it stood as the center of order and authority, where the most powerful races gathered to decide the fate of galaxies. But now fear crept through its streets like a shadow no one could escape. Every screen, every broadcast, every communication channel carried the same message: unknown fleets destroying defense lines, systems going silent, and outposts vanishing into nothing. The words Terran Federation began to appear again after decades of being erased from history. At first, many citizens thought it was propaganda or some kind of simulation. But when the Council's own fleets stopped responding, the truth became impossible to ignore. Humanity had returned. In the Grand Council Tower, the Chancellor stood at the center of the Great Chamber, surrounded by leaders of 100 species. The room was filled with panic. Voices clashed in chaos. Some demanded to open peace talks, others screamed for war. "They cannot destroy us all," shouted one. "They are only one species," cried another. But deep down, everyone felt the same thing, a silent, heavy fear that wrapped around their hearts. The Chancellor raised his trembling hands. "Order!" he shouted, his voice breaking through the noise. "We are the Council. We cannot fall to chaos." Yet even he could feel the tremor in his own words. A young officer rushed into the chamber, breathing fast. "Sir. Human fleets detected on long-range scanners. They're heading for Celestra Prime." The room fell silent. The Chancellor's eyes widened. "How many?" The officer swallowed hard. "Too many to count." Outside, the skies began to darken. From the edge of space, faint lights appeared, tiny at first, like falling stars. Then more, hundreds, thousands, until the heavens looked like they were on fire. Human ships filled the orbit of Celestra Prime, black and silent, moving in perfect formation. The Council activated the planet's defense grid, the largest in the galaxy. Hundreds of energy cannons pointed toward the stars, shields spread across the atmosphere like a glowing dome. "They cannot break through," said one general confidently. "Our defenses are impenetrable." But then the first shot came, and everything changed. It was not a large explosion, not even a visible beam. It was a pulse, an invisible wave that passed through every defense system in seconds. Screens went black. Cannons powered down. Shields flickered and died. The command center filled with panic. "They've shut us down," someone shouted. "They're inside our systems." The humans didn't fire again. Instead, one small object broke formation and descended through the dead sky. It was not a weapon, but a drop pod. It entered the atmosphere silently, leaving a trail of blue flame behind. It crashed gently in the center of the capital square, where millions watched in fear. Security forces surrounded it, weapons ready. The pod opened with a hiss, revealing only a small black cube inside. No soldiers. No bombs. Just the cube. The Chancellor arrived moments later, escorted by guards. He stared at it, unsure whether to touch it or destroy it. Then the cube projected a hologram, a message written in simple, cold words: "Remember your sins. We are only collecting the debt." The message repeated once, then the cube went dark. The Chancellor's face turned pale. Around him, citizens whispered in confusion. "What debt? What does it mean?" No one understood, but the fear grew deeper. Above the planet, the human fleet remained still, watching but not attacking. The Council sent a desperate transmission. "To the Terran Federation," the Chancellor said, his voice shaking, "this is the Galactic Council. We seek dialogue. We request communication." But there was no reply. Only silence. Hours passed. The tension was unbearable. Every sensor, every telescope, every camera stayed fixed on the silent ships in orbit. Then, without warning, the human fleet moved again. But instead of attacking the planet, they targeted the shipyards, the military satellites, and the communication beacons. Within minutes, every orbital structure was gone. The humans were not here to conquer, they were here to humiliate. They wanted the Council to feel powerless, to taste the same helplessness humanity had felt 50 years ago. On the surface, the people of Celestra Prime watched the sky burn. Parents held their children close. Soldiers waited for orders that never came. And in the council chamber, despair settled in like a heavy fog. "They could destroy us easily," said one senator softly. "But they don't." "Why?" The Chancellor stared at the blank cube on his desk. "Because they want us to remember," he whispered. "They want us to live with the fear they once lived with." As he spoke, new reports arrived, more planets under attack, fleets vanishing, colonies going silent. Humanity was moving through the galaxy like a storm of ghosts, striking with precision and then vanishing before anyone could react. The Council finally realized that they were not fighting an army, they were facing an idea. The idea of vengeance. The Chancellor ordered an emergency evacuation of key officials, but deep inside, he knew it would not matter. Celestra Prime was already broken, not by weapons, but by shame. That night, the skies glowed red from burning stations, and the people wept as they watched their once glorious fleets fall. Somewhere above, on the Erebus, Commander Kane watched the destruction through his observation window. His officers waited for his command to finish the attack. But Kane simply said, "No. Let them live. Fear is a better teacher than fire." His second-in-command nodded. "And what of the message, sir?" Kane's expression was unreadable. They've received it. Now we see if they understand it. The human fleet turned away, leaving behind the smoking remains of the Council's pride. Celestra Prime, once the heart of the galaxy, was silent. In the empty chamber where the cube still lay, the words glowed faintly once more, "Remember your sins." The Chancellor stared at them for a long time, realizing too late that this was only the beginning. The fall of Celestra Prime shook the galaxy to its core. Every broadcast, every news channel, every system in Council space carried the same haunting image, the black human fleet moving silently across the stars. Worlds that once believed themselves untouchable now trembled in fear. The Council's armies were scattered, their communication networks crippled, and their leaders divided by panic. The Chancellor spent sleepless nights in the shadow of his ruined city, staring at the sky and wondering when the next attack would come. His advisors spoke of surrender, others of counterattack, but none had a plan that made sense. Then, deep within the Council's archives, buried in classified files, someone mentioned the existence of a secret project, a weapon so powerful that even the stars feared its name. The Starbreaker Array. It was said to be the ultimate defense, a network of orbital cannons capable of destroying entire star systems. Created long ago during the Old Wars, it had never been used. It was hidden, protected, and forgotten by most. Now the Council wanted to bring it back. "If the humans think they can scare us," said General Tareth, the head of the Council's military, "then let them see the fire of 1,000 suns." Engineers worked day and night, reactivating ancient systems, connecting lost data cores, and restoring power to the hidden array. The Starbreaker was located on a dead world called Vornax 9, a cold planet covered in metal and ash. For weeks, the Council sent transports, scientists, and soldiers there under heavy secrecy. They believed this weapon would end the war before it truly began. But in the silence of space, someone was watching. Human reconnaissance drones, invisible to sensors, followed every ship that left Celestra Prime. They tracked the convoys, listened to their encrypted signals, and sent the information straight to the Terran Federation. On the flagship Erebus, Commander Elias Kane listened to the recordings in silence. His expression did not change, but his eyes narrowed. "They are trying to wake the Starbreaker," said his second-in-command. Kane nodded slowly. "Let them. Sometimes it's better to watch your enemy build their own trap." 4 days, the humans observed as the Council activated the massive weapon. On Vornax 9, huge towers rose into the sky, glowing with blue light. The weapon drew its energy directly from the planet's molten core. The Council believed it was unstoppable. The Chancellor himself arrived to witness the final activation. "When the humans see this," he said, "they will learn fear again." But far above the planet, hidden among the asteroids, a small group of human ships waited. They carried no heavy weapons, no bombs, only silence and code. The plan was not to destroy the Starbreaker, but to take it. "They built it," Kane said, "but we will make it ours." Using quantum infiltration, the human engineers began to hack into the weapon's mainframe. The Council had built strong firewalls, but humanity's technology had evolved far beyond what they remembered. One by one, the systems fell. The control screens on Vornax 9 started flickering. Alarms sounded, and panic filled the control room. "We are losing command," shouted a technician. "Someone is inside the system." The Chancellor turned sharply. "What do you mean, inside?" "It's an override code, not ours. It's rewriting everything." "Block it," he ordered. "Cut the power if you must." But it was already too late. The giant weapon, once glowing blue, now pulsed red. The alien engineers watched in horror as the command screens changed language, all text replaced with human script. The symbol of Earth appeared at the center. A new voice spoke through the intercom, calm and cold. "Your weapon now belongs to us." Every soldier froze. The voice continued. "You built a tool of destruction to feel safe. We built a reason to use it." On the Erebus, Kane stood before a massive screen showing live feeds from the Starbreaker. The human hacking team confirmed full control. "The weapon is ours, Commander," said the chief engineer. "They can't take it back." Kane looked out at the stars. "Good," he said softly. "Then it's time they see what their own fear looks like." The Council, realizing what had happened, tried desperately to cut power to the weapon. But the humans had locked every system. The Starbreaker was now under Terran control. The Chancellor's voice echoed across the command center. Deactivate it. Before his words stopped when the planet shook violently. The ground cracked, towers fell, and the sky turned red. The Starbreaker fired, not at the humans, but at one of the Council's own military outposts on the far side of the system. The beam of energy was blinding, a line of fire that crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. When it ended, there was nothing left. A world had vanished, erased from existence. Silence filled the chamber. The Chancellor fell back into his chair, speechless. They used our weapon against us, whispered one officer. No, said another, trembling. They made it theirs. Across the galaxy, news spread faster than light. Every race, every government, every trader heard the same rumor: the humans had captured the Starbreaker. Some refused to believe it. Others began to panic, realizing that the Council's greatest weapon was now under the control of the very race they once abandoned. On the Erebus, Kane watched the explosion fade on the screen. His crew waited for his next order. Should we use it again, sir? Asked one officer. Kane shook his head. No. One shot is enough. Let them think about it. He turned to his command team. Transmit a message to the Council. Tell them we don't need their weapons. Tell them we can end this war whenever we choose. Moments later, the message reached Celestra Prime. The Chancellor read it in silence. It said only 5 words: your weapon has changed sides. He crushed the datapad in his hand. Around him, the councillors began to argue, but he heard none of it. He knew the truth. The humans were not just fighting a war, they were proving a point. They had become everything the Council had once feared: powerful, united, unstoppable. And somewhere far beyond, on the bridge of the Erebus, Kane whispered to himself, the galaxy taught us betrayal. Now, it will learn consequence. Outside, the stars shimmered like distant witnesses to a revenge too long delayed, and the shadow of humanity spread deeper into the heart of the galaxy. The galaxy was silent, but that silence was not peace, it was fear. Every broadcast, every signal, every whisper among the stars carried one message: humanity had taken the Starbreaker. The Galactic Council tried to hide the truth, censoring transmissions and controlling the flow of information, but secrets never stayed buried for long. In less than a week, entire colonies knew what had happened on Vornax 9. Rumors spread faster than ships could travel. Some said the humans had destroyed 10 worlds. Others claimed they had built a new empire beyond the rim. The Chancellor ordered all systems into lockdown, forbidding travel and communication without direct permission. Yet the panic only grew. Inside the council chambers, the air was thick with tension. We created the monster, said one councillor, his voice shaking. We gave them the means to destroy us. Silence, shouted the Chancellor, slamming his hand on the table. We will not surrender to fear. The humans are still outnumbered. They control one weapon. We control thousands. But deep down, even he knew those words were hollow. The Starbreaker was not just a weapon, it was a symbol, and symbols had power far beyond metal and fire. Across the void, on the human flagship Erebus, Commander Elias Kane stood before the great viewing window. His reflection merged with the stars, his eyes cold and thoughtful. Around him, officers worked silently, their faces lit by blue control screens. Any response from the Council? He asked. None, sir, replied his communications officer. But our long-range scans show heavy fleet movements near their border systems. They're scared. Kane nodded slowly. Good. Fear makes them predictable. He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare the next phase. It's time they understand why we're here. The officer hesitated. You mean Operation Echo? Kane's lips curved slightly. Exactly. Hours later, hidden probes across council space activated simultaneously. They began transmitting old recordings, intercepted transmissions, and classified documents, evidence of what the council had done decades ago. Every citizen, every soldier, every official saw the truth unfiltered for the first time. They saw how humanity had once been part of the Galactic Union, how Earth had reached out in peace, how the Council had accepted their help and then betrayed them. The videos showed human colonies burned, their leaders executed, their cities wiped from maps under the pretense of containment. They saw children crying in the ruins, begging for mercy that never came. And then, silence. The Council had buried those records, erased them from history, and rewritten the past. But now, the truth was free. Across the galaxy, riots broke out. On dozens of worlds, alien citizens began questioning their leaders. Why did they hide this? If the humans were victims, what does that make us? The Chancellor's control began to crumble. In the Grand Chamber, councillors shouted over each other. "It's propaganda," yelled one. "It can't be real." "It's real," whispered another. "My own archives confirm it." The Chancellor rose, his face pale. "Shut it down. Every transmission. Every system. Shut them all down now." But it was too late. The truth had already reached the people. On the Erebus, Kane watched the chaos unfold. "They needed to remember," he said softly. "Before we finish this, they must see what they did." His second-in-command, Captain Mara Voss, stood beside him. "And when they do?" Kane turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "Then they will understand that this isn't vengeance. It's justice." As the Council scrambled to regain control, a new problem emerged. Many of their own fleets stopped responding to orders. Some ships deserted. Others sent encrypted messages to the humans, asking for asylum or truce. The galaxy's balance of power was collapsing faster than anyone imagined. The Chancellor gathered his remaining generals in the war room. "We are being torn apart from within," he said. "The humans have turned our people against us. We must strike now, before it's too late." "Strike where?" asked one general. "They're everywhere. We don't even know where their fleets hide." The Chancellor looked up, his eyes full of desperation. "Then we find them. Even if it means burning half the galaxy to do it." But before his words could echo, the room darkened. Every screen flickered, every light dimmed. A holographic figure appeared in the center of the room, a human. Kane's face stared down at them, calm, cold, and unshaken. "You wanted a war," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "But you don't understand what that means. You think you can erase us again. You can't. We are already inside your systems. Your fleets, your planets, your history, it all belongs to us now." The generals froze. The hologram flickered again, showing live footage from multiple Council facilities, factories shutting down, ships powering off, and entire planets going dark. How did they do this?" whispered one. Kane's image looked directly at the Chancellor. "You taught us betrayal. You perfected control. We learned from the best." Then the hologram vanished, and the power returned, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The Chancellor stared at the floor, his hands trembling. "He's not just fighting us," he said quietly. "He's dismantling everything we are." Across the stars, humanity's presence grew stronger. More Council outposts fell under human influence. Their AI systems were being overridden, their communication networks jammed. The galaxy was beginning to change, not through war, but through truth. On neutral worlds, aliens began protesting against the Council, demanding accountability. Statues were torn down. Old leaders fled. The humans hadn't fired another shot since taking the Starbreaker, yet they were winning. On the Erebus, Kane watched as reports came in. "We're not just breaking their armies," said Captain Voss. "We're breaking their faith." Kane nodded slowly. "That's how you end an empire." But as victory drew closer, a new message arrived on his console, an ancient transmission code from Earth itself. He opened it, and a familiar face appeared on screen, Admiral Wren, head of the Terran Command. "Commander Kane," said the Admiral, his voice grave. "You've done well. But there's something you need to know. The Council isn't finished. They've awakened something older than the Starbreaker. Something they shouldn't have touched." Kane frowned. "What do you mean?" The Admiral's image flickered. "They found the Vault of Eternum. And if they open it, none of us will survive." The screen went dark, leaving Kane staring into the void. Outside, the stars shimmered faintly, unaware that the true storm had not yet begun. The warning from Admiral Wren echoed in Kane's mind long after the transmission ended. The bridge of the Erebus was silent except for the hum of the engines and the faint flicker of distant starlight. The Vault of Eternum, Kane repeated under his breath. The name felt heavy, ancient, like a secret that should never have been spoken aloud. Captain Mara Voss looked at him, her brow furrowed. "Sir, what is it? What's in that vault?" Kane turned slowly toward her. "Legends say it's older than the Council itself. A relic from the first civilizations that walked these stars. Even the oldest archives only mention it in whispers." The room darkened as he brought up a holographic map. It displayed a region of space completely uncharted, a dead zone beyond the galactic rim, where no signal had returned for centuries. At its center was a single red marker, Eternum. "If the Council has found it," Kane said, "then they're desperate. Desperate enough to awaken something they don't understand." Voss crossed her arms. "So what do? We find it before they open it." Hours later, the human fleet moved in silence through deep space. Every ship ran in stealth mode, their engines dimmed, their signals masked. They passed through the outer systems where the stars were faint and the darkness seemed endless. Kane stood at the viewport, watching as fragments of light drifted like ghosts. "This place feels wrong," murmured one of the crew. He was right. The void ahead seemed to swallow sound itself. As they approached the coordinates, strange readings began to appear on their scanners. Gravity waves pulsed irregularly, as if space itself were breathing. And then, at last, they saw it, the Vault of Eternum. It was not a building or a planet, but a structure of impossible design. A colossal sphere floating in space, made of black stone that shimmered like liquid glass. It pulsed faintly with blue veins of energy, ancient and alive. Around it drifted hundreds of Council ships, their lights forming a cage around the relic. "They're already here," Voss said. Kane narrowed his eyes. "And they're activating it." Inside the vault, deep within the alien architecture, the Chancellor stood among scientists and soldiers. His face was pale, his voice trembling with both awe and fear. "This is our salvation," he said. "The humans think they can dominate us, but this is power beyond their understanding." The head scientist, an elder alien with trembling hands, adjusted his equipment. "The vault responds to energy signatures, Chancellor. It was sealed for a reason. If we break the containment field, we may unleash victory," the Chancellor interrupted sharply. "Do it." The scientist hesitated, then obeyed. The chamber filled with light as ancient mechanisms awoke for the first time in millennia. Symbols glowed across the walls, rotating in perfect patterns. The air vibrated with low, haunting tones, like voices from another age. The ground began to shake. "Containment field collapsing," shouted one of the technicians. "It's opening." Meanwhile, the human fleet detected a massive surge of energy. "They're doing it," Voss said. "They're opening the vault." Kane clenched his jaw. "Prepare intercept. We can't let them finish." The Erebus accelerated, leading the fleet toward the relic. Council warships opened fire immediately, streaks of plasma crossing the void. "Evasive," shouted Kane. The Erebus rolled sharply, dodging incoming blasts. Smaller human ships weaved through the chaos, returning fire with precision strikes. Explosions lit up the darkness like supernovas. Then, without warning, the vault emitted a pulse of light so bright it blinded every sensor. Both fleets stopped firing as the energy washed over them. The pulse spread for light years, silencing all communication. Inside the vault, the Chancellor stumbled backward as the chamber split open. From within the core, a massive shape emerged, tall, metallic, and impossibly ancient. It was not a machine nor a creature, but something in between. Its form shifted constantly, as if reality itself could not decide what it was. The scientist screamed. "It's not a weapon, it's a memory." The entity turned its gaze upon them. Its voice was a whisper in every mind, old and infinite. "You are not the first," it said. "You seek power you cannot hold. You awaken what should remain forgotten." The Chancellor fell to his knees. "We only want to survive." The voice answered, cold and sorrowful. "Then you will end as those before you did." Outside, the humans watched as the vault's energy spiked again. "Sir," Voss said urgently, "readings are off the charts." It's destabilizing the entire region. Kane realized what was happening. They've awakened something alive. The vault's energy expanded, engulfing nearby council ships and turning them into dust. One by one, their lights vanished. Fall back. Kane ordered. Get us clear. The Erebus turned hard, its engines flaring as the shockwave chased it. The vault continued to grow brighter, consuming everything around it. But then, something unexpected happened. The entity spoke again, not to the council, but to the humans. You carry their scars, it said. And their fire. You are the last echoes of those who fell before. Kane felt the words inside his mind, deep and burning. Who are you? He whispered. The voice replied, I am the remnant. The memory of those who built the stars. Kane's eyes widened. Then help us stop them. Help us end this. For a long moment, there was silence. Then the entity's glow shifted from blue to white. Balance must return. I will choose one side. The light intensified, spreading outward. The remaining council ships tried to flee, but the vault's energy reached them first, disintegrating them in waves of white fire. Only the human ships remained untouched. The Erebus watched as the vault began to collapse in on itself, folding space and time. The entity's voice echoed one last time. Remember what you are. Remember why you rose. And then it was gone. The vault vanished completely, leaving only silence. The scanners cleared, and the stars returned to their places as if nothing had happened. On the Erebus, no one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Voss broke the silence. It spared us. Kane nodded slowly. No. It judged us, and found us worthy. But deep in his mind, he knew this was not the end. The council was shattered, their fleets destroyed, but something older now watched the galaxy with open eyes. And as the Erebus turned toward the light of distant Earth, Kane couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's greatest challenge had just begun. The galaxy was quiet after the collapse of the Vault of Eternum, but that silence was not peace, it was the breath before the next storm. The human fleet drifted in the darkness near the ruins of the battle, their ships battered but victorious. On the bridge of the Erebus, Commander Elias Kane stood at the viewport, watching the remnants of the Council fleet fade into nothing. Status report, he said calmly. Captain Mara Voss scanned the monitors. Minimal damage, sir. Casualties are low. But communication with Earth Command is still unstable after the energy pulse. Kane nodded slightly. Keep trying. The Admiral will want to know what happened here. As she moved to her console, he turned his gaze toward the stars. They seemed different now, colder, older, watching in silence. The memory of the entity's voice still echoed in his mind. Remember what you are. Remember why you rose. Those words carried both warning and truth. Humanity had survived, yes, but something far greater had been unleashed. Across the galaxy, fragments of the Council's empire lay in chaos. Without leadership, their worlds turned on one another. Some sought peace with humanity, others plotted revenge. And deep within the surviving colonies, strange signals began to appear, whispers from the void, carrying fragments of code that no living species could decipher. On the surface, it looked like static. But to Kane, it felt like the echo of a presence that refused to fade. The vault may be gone, he murmured, but it left something behind. Days passed as the human fleet repaired its ships. Messages from scattered outposts arrived, confirming what Kane already suspected: the Council had fallen. The Chancellor was missing, presumed dead. Entire species that once ruled under the Council's banner now sought alliance with Earth. For the first time in history, humanity was not an outcast, it was the center of power. But victory came with a cost. The Erebus AI reported strange readings from the ship's reactor, patterns that didn't belong there. The same frequencies emitted by the vault before it collapsed. Kane called a meeting with his senior officers. Whatever we encountered at Eternum, it didn't just vanish, he said. It imprinted something, on us, on our systems, maybe even on me. Voss frowned. You think it followed us? Not in the way you think, Kane replied. It's not alive in the physical sense. It's a memory. A consciousness made of energy. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. So what do we do? One asked. Kane looked at the glowing hologram of the galaxy. We learn. And we prepare. Because if that thing was a remnant of the first civilization, it wasn't alone. Meanwhile, in the ruins of Celestra Prime, the once proud capital of the Council, faint lights flickered deep underground. A lone survivor, a young alien technician named Varin, stumbled through the wreckage. He found an old terminal still active, displaying encrypted data from the vault. As he decrypted it, his eyes widened in terror. No, this can't be real. The files spoke of the remnant's purpose, not as a guardian, but as a warden. It had sealed away something even older, something the first civilizations had feared. And now, that seal was weakening. Back aboard the Erebus, Kane stared at the latest transmission from Earth Command. The message was brief but clear: return to Sol immediately. Urgent developments on Earth. The tone was grim. Set course for home, he ordered. The stars stretched into lines as the fleet jumped into hyperspace. Days later, Earth appeared, a blue gem floating in the void, still beautiful, still defiant. But as they approached, something felt wrong. Planetary defense grids were active, orbiting drones on full alert. This isn't standard procedure, Voss said. They're acting like we're a threat. Open a channel, Kane ordered. The face of Admiral Wren appeared, his expression heavy with exhaustion. Commander Kane, he began, welcome home. But I'm afraid the war isn't over. Kane frowned. The Council is gone. What's left to fight? Wren hesitated. You brought something back from Eternum. Our sensors detected an unknown energy signature attached to your fleet. It's spreading, through your ships, through your crew. Kane's blood ran cold. You think we're infected? Not infected, said Wren softly. Changed. Suddenly, the Erebus lights flickered. The Ari's voice distorted, turning deep and fragmented. We, remember, the crew froze. What was that? Voss whispered. The AI continued, its tone almost human. We saw the beginning. We will see the end. Alarms blared as the systems began to malfunction. Kane slammed his hand on the console. Shut it down. But it was too late. The holographic map of the galaxy reappeared, now glowing with hundreds of red points of light. Sir, said an officer, panic rising in his voice, those aren't stars. They're signals, coming from across the galaxy. Wren's image flickered back onto the screen. It's happening everywhere. The energy from the vault, it's reawakening other relics. Whatever the Council unleashed, it's spreading. The entire bridge fell silent. For a long moment, Kane didn't speak. Then he looked out at Earth, his home, his world, now standing at the edge of something far greater than any war. Then the galaxy has one last lesson to learn, he said quietly. Humanity doesn't run from the unknown. We face it. Wren nodded grimly. Then you'd better be ready, Commander. Because the stars are waking up. The transmission ended, leaving only the hum of the ship. Kane turned to his crew. Prepare a deep space task force. We find where those signals lead. Whatever is coming, we meet it first. As the Erebus ascended above Earth's orbit, the first rays of dawn spread across the planet's surface. The light reflected off the ship's hull like a promise that humanity would stand, no matter what awaited beyond the stars. Kane watched it silently, the weight of the future pressing on his shoulders. The Council thought they ruled the galaxy, he said softly. But this is the beginning of something new. Voss stepped beside him. The last dawn, she asked. Kane nodded, a faint smile forming. No. The first. And as the Erebus vanished into the light, humanity's story entered a new chapter, one not written by fear or vengeance, but by the unbreakable will of those who refused to fade.